Hello and welcome to the Happy Healthcare Professionals live show. It's Wednesday and it's the Happy Healthcare Professionals live show. I am really excited about today's discussion. If you are new to watching this show, then let me just explain a little bit about it. It is called the Happy Healthcare Professionals live show, which is all about really showcasing pharmacy professionals and other healthcare professionals and their careers, how they have forged incredible careers for themselves. I want you to be inspired by them. And that's the reason why I put this show together. I'm your host. My name is Kamal. I'm a former national level pharmacist turned career change coach and business strategist for pharmacy professionals. And I absolutely love helping pharmacy professionals to reinvent their careers, to create really incredible careers that they feel really proud of, and become happy healthcare professionals again. So on today's show, I have got an incredible colleague of mine who has been a beacon in community pharmacy for a really long time. And if you are joining live and you know who's joining us, then say hi in the comments. Let us know that you are here. Janice is the former national superintendent for Well Pharmacy, which is obviously the third largest multiple in the UK. She has literally been an incredible community pharmacist for well over 30 years. She is responsible for creating patient safety culture and encourages colleagues to report, share and learn, act and review so that there's continual improvement in quality and safety of medicine supply and pharmacy services. She joined Well way back in 2000 and is now a fellow of the Royal Pharmaceutical Society. She's the chair of the Community Pharmacy Patient Safety Group. And the list literally goes on. She's a visiting professor in community pharmacy at Keele University. And she's also recently been appointed as the chair of the Royal Pharmaceutical Society Community Pharmacy Expert Advisory Group. So I cannot wait to have this conversation with Janice. So without further ado, let me bring her on screen.
Hi, hello. Janice. Hi. How are you?
I'm good. I actually got a bit flustered there because I was like, oh my God, I've got so much to say about Janice. I don't want to miss any of it.
That's fine. And hello to anybody who's listening live. And if anybody's listening later on, then hello.
Yes. Absolutely. I can see Nabila's on there. Hi,
yes,
Nabila.
I can see Nabila. Hi, Nabila.
So, Janice, tell us about your career, because I know you from your capacity as a PSNC committee member from my time working at PSNC, but that's really only a tiny proportion of the work that you've done. So take us back. Tell me about your career in pharmacy.
Right. So actually it started probably before I went to university. So sometimes people say, how did you get into pharmacy? And actually I read an article in a newspaper that talked about how medicines and plants in this particular case could help people with illness. And I was doing science and I was thinking, what do I want to do? And I thought, that really floats my boat. So I thought I want to go to university to do pharmacy. So I applied and I went to Manchester. Interestingly, I really hated the first year at university. I could easily have gone, just given up, just didn't enjoy it. I don't really know why, but I persevered because I'm not somebody who gives up. And, actually, I really did enjoy the rest of it. And I do wonder sometimes how many people don't. The first year can be a very general year, can't it? And how many people might be in the same position. And I think what changed it was I then went and was a pharmacy student, and because I was having vocational experience, which I think a lot of people do nowadays, it wasn't as common all those years ago. And I loved it, absolutely loved my vocational experience. I probably could have just stayed as a pharmacy student in vocational experience forever. But anyway, I did that, and that made me decide that I wanted to be in community pharmacy. I have spent my whole career in community pharmacy, so I did my pre-reg. I started off with Boots. I loved my pre-reg year. I remember crying when I left my pre-reg because I just loved it. I loved it. But one of the things that happened while I was a pre-reg, I learned so much from my tutor. And even then I thought, right, as soon as I can be a pre-reg tutor, I want to be a pre-reg tutor because I want to do the same for somebody else. And it's always been a big thing for me about giving back and helping others, because I think the whole profession has to run on that. If we weren't all, supporting pre-regis, or as they're now going to be called, foundation pharmacists, the whole system kind of falls down, doesn't it? So I worked my way up, as a lot of people do, pharmacist, pharmacy manager, branch manager. It was all about taking opportunities. A lot of people say you should plan out what you're going to do. I didn't really do that particularly. And things got, I saw things and I thought, oh, I fancy that. And sometimes people just ask me if I'd do it. And I think you should always consider an opportunity if it comes your way. One thing that didn't happen was I didn't progress as fast as some of my colleagues that that were perhaps in the same cohort. But speed isn't everything. I think it's about getting a good grounding, and I wanted to not just jump to something, and I wanted to see what happened in different roles. So I moved around a bit more slowly, but getting to understand things properly and building a good grounding. And I did a mixture of operational and professional roles for Boots, big and small, working my way up to district manager. Did quite a lot of troubleshooting roles. Something was going wrong. Oh, can you go from your, go and do a secondment here? So I put myself out, to do stuff, but it was a great learning experience. I was with Boots for 17 years doing all these different roles, and I left because I got made redundant. I got made redundant because there was a restructure, which happens all the time in large organisations. And the opportunity that was there wasn't right for me. My daughter was just about to start school, and I couldn't see how I could do it to the best of my ability. Without, a different support network, and you have to work with the tools you've got. Well, I wasn't bothered, because you think, well, you've got your whole career, haven't you, to do what you need to do. So you have to make the decisions at the right time. So I'd already made the decision, not long after she was born. I always knew I'd have to go back, quite soon, from a financial perspective, but something came up a bit sooner than I expected, but I wanted to do it. So you put the arrangements in place, but it's always about choices and decisions, isn't it? So after I left Boots, I actually locumed for a bit of time, which is actually really, really good. I enjoyed that as well. And you get something out of everything that you do. And it was while I was locuming, I saw, the job. It wasn't I didn't go to the co-op as the superintendent. I joined the co-op as a business development manager. I started doing that now, and I was really loving that. I wasn't looking to make any changes, but I had done a lot of professional stuff. There was three of us as business development managers, and I was the one that was kind of always, facing into the professional stuff. So I kind of had that in my repertoire. Others were facing into different aspects, and then suddenly they needed a superintendent. It wasn't a planned thing. It happened. Literally, I got asked, would you be willing to be the superintendent? So it wasn't kind of like a pre-planned thing. I was a bit like, oh, yeah. And I thought, but yeah, why wouldn't I do that? I love the professional side of things. And so, I did that. So I've been the superintendent for 15 years. And people say, oh, you've had the same job all that time. But I can honestly say being the superintendent up until a couple of weeks ago is nothing like when I first became it. The title stayed the same, but the role has morphed over all those years, because community pharmacy has changed in that 15 years. It's not the same now as it was then. It's far more challenging. It's a much more comprehensive role. All of pharmacy is more challenging than it was 15 years ago, not just being the superintendent. So I feel that although I've had the same title, I feel like actually I've done lots of different jobs within that as my remit has, grown, and particularly as I've expanded and got involved in, external activities. So do you want me to talk a bit about what I do externally?
Yeah, that would be great. I want to go back to your superintendent.
Yeah.
That point at which you were asked to become the superintendent. Did you have a point where you were just like, this is a massive role? like, can I do this? Did you feel that?
I had a point where I was like, you know, when you go to a meeting and you don't know what you're expecting. So it just, you know, I just got asked, you know, by the managing director, you know, who said, you know, that, you know, there's a need in the business. There's been a change, you know, a sudden unexpected change. You know, I think you've got the skills that are needed, because he looked at my background, and I'd always worked with him on the professional stuff. And yeah, you always have that little inkling of doubt. But then I thought, why? I'd already worked with the superintendent. I was always feeding things in, and in the back of my mind, I'd always thought, oh, I'd quite like to do that job. I wonder how she got to be the superintendent. And she'd been there, you know, prior to me, and we worked very, very closely. So yeah, you always have that little bit of doubt. I think you know, however experienced you are, however high up the progression you get, you know, and people have different degrees of this, don't you? And then, you know, sometimes, you know, you get this imposter syndrome about, am I good enough? You know, how did I get that job? Do I know my stuff? And we all have that at any level. And I've had that throughout my career. Sometimes think, well, you know, I don't know everything there is to know. But that's one thing about being the superintendent, which I always say to people: being the superintendent doesn't mean that you have to be a super pharmacist and the best at every single thing. It's not that kind of a role. It's a leadership role, you know, and it's actually about it's a very generalist role. And it's a very people-facing role. So you don't have to be the best pharmacist in the world. You have to have a really wide range of skills in order to, particularly in a large organisation, to be a superintendent. It's not just about being professionally brilliant. I'm not professionally brilliant, and I'm certainly not clinically brilliant, but I have surrounded myself with some really good clinicians who provide that input into the people, you know, who need it. So it's a fabulous role, particularly in a large organisation, because it's just so many different facets to it.
Yeah, I can imagine just how much that kind of, you're constantly being challenged, and that's really, that drives you, right? That drives you forward, because you're always learning. Yeah. And I think that's, you know, that's what's so amazing about being a superintendent, right?
Yeah. I mean, I have really absolutely loved being the superintendent. That's not to say that you don't have difficult times within that. I mean, it's a very challenging role, being a superintendent. And whilst you have a team with you, whether you're at work, at home, you're on holiday or whatever, you are always still that superintendent. You're totally responsible all the time. And that's a responsibility I've always taken really, really seriously. But it's also a role that I feel immensely privileged to have had the opportunity, because being the superintendent, particularly of a large organisation, gives you the opportunity to help shape things. So some of it's about being the person you are, and you get invited because you're Janice, but some meetings that you get invited to, you're invited to because you're the superintendent of a large organisation, and that enables you to have that opportunity to shape things. And it's a privilege that you have to use wisely. And I see the role of the superintendent being as much about playing your part for the profession as it is for the organisation. And the role really is there, you know, separate to protecting the public, is really for the professionals in the organisation. So my role was about making sure that things were right professionally for all the people who worked for the organisation. And making sure that the professional direction for the business was set, and that expanded into all different teams. If you think about the GPHC standards, and particularly safe and effective pharmacy teams, they go across a whole remit. Well, within a large organisation, there'll be other people who are in charge of the, you know, the HR team, who are in charge of finances, who are in charge of other things, but your role is to influence and make sure that other senior leaders within the business are operating within those standards and are actually making the things happen to support the direction of travel that happens professionally. And you set the tone. You set the tone for the business. And I've always seen the role, and the way that I've always been the superintendent, it might be different for other superintendents, is to be the conscience of the organisation, to be that critical friend or uncomfortable companion, whichever word you want to use for it. You know, you are part of the organisation, but you are also have to be a little bit of a step back from it. So you're ambassador for it, but you've got to be able to be that little bit of a step back. Because sometimes being the superintendent is about telling people in organisations things they don't want to hear. It's not about being a yes person and going, that's fine. It's about dealing with difficult things, coming up with other solutions, because it is about maintaining standards and doing the right thing for the teams that are at the sharp end. They're relying on the superintendent in a large organisation to be that barrier and to protect them and wrap them round, with making sure that things are right for them, so there's a lot to think about. I think anybody who aspires to be a superintendent in a large organisation needs to get a real breadth of experience. So it's not just about having that professional experience. You do need the operational experience. You do need commercial experience. You need to understand the business. You need to think about, your networking and you're building good relationships. And you have to have a real interest in people, because I think, I know that we've got over 1,000 pharmacists, we've got 1,000 technicians, but there were 6,000 people working for Well. And I felt a personal responsibility to make sure that everything was right professionally for those people to the best of my ability. I'm not saying that this is about making things perfect, and there's always improvements that can be made. But it's about trying to make sure that you are there, being their voice professionally in all those meetings, so that they can be the best professionals that they can be.
Yeah, one of the things one of the things I really admire about you is that ability to be able to relate to everyone. And I think that's one of your strengths from what I know of you, and from my experience of having worked with you. I think I see you as someone who puts other people at the heart of everything that you do. And talk to me about that, because I know you're a big advocate of, creating an inclusive environment.
Yeah. So I think any business is only is about the people that are in it, and that's how you get your success. I've built a strong team to work with, but it's always been really important to me to be as close as possible to what's actually happening in the pharmacies. Now, when you get to be the superintendent of a large organisation, you clearly don't know what's happening every single place. You've got things delegated to other people, but it's about making time for people. So doing pharmacy visits, when you can, and it's difficult to balance all the external stuff with the internal stuff and all the meetings, and there are lots and lots of meetings, but you need to be at meetings in order to influence or to have your team there and to get information to make a difference. But it is about making yourself available. So I've always been a superintendent that's made sure that my contact details are freely available. I've always had a personal principle that says that if something serious happens, I can't say that for every single incident, because that just isn't doable, but if anything serious happens, and particularly if I was made aware, but one of my mantras was my team always made me aware if something serious happened, whatever time of day, day or night, was I made it my responsibility that I would ring and check that the team were okay. And that's whether it would be a professional incident, or it could be something else that's happened, even if it's something that's gone, they've had a flood, or something else has happened in the pharmacy. I think it's about having care and compassion for the people who work there, and showing that you try to connect as best as you can. And it's really difficult with so many people, and being over all 4 countries, you can't be everywhere. I didn't actually get to visit all the pharmacies within Well in the time that I was there. It just was not possible. But through attending meetings and conferences, I made it my business to put myself out to always go to conferences where our managers, pharmacists were getting together, to always go to pre-reg events, and obviously recently with provisional pharmacist events. So it's putting yourself up. So you say, well, why are you going and why are you doing that? But it's about that visibility, about making that connection. And even if you're only speaking for a short period of time, or even if you're only there socializing in the coffee break so that you get to know people, so people can put the face behind the name. I think it's really important, and it's doing the little things for for people. Some of you will have seen on LinkedIn that one of the things that I wanted to happen as I was leaving, as I wanted something to happen for the pharmacy team, so sent them cake. And I always take biscuits when I go on branch visits and things like that. It's little things that show that you're thinking, about people that do make the difference. And it's harder in a large organisation because you are that bit remote. And I've been really keen to try and not have this, people who work in a head office environment and don't know what's happening at the sharp end, and actually to give people the opportunity to tell me. I won't always know what's going on, but I'll give you the opportunity that if you want to ring me, let me know in any shape or form, then you can contact me. And that's why I also made sure that I was the Freedom to Speak Up Guardian, and was the Caldecott Guardian, and some of those other roles that could have been for other people. And I made a point of looking at all those types of emails that came through personally. I didn't always fix them myself, because that's what your team's for, but I wanted to see those things, just like I would always make sure that I was looking periodically into the other email boxes that were coming in from our branch teams, because it gives you a chance to see what's being said, how people are feeling, and it's that connection that's needed. But picking up on your point about inclusion and diversity in the team, it's always been really important to me to have a very inclusive and diverse team. And I just want to make the point that obviously you can have a very diverse team, but that doesn't mean that people feel included, because they are two completely separate things. Yeah. But I've always worked to the principle, there's no point in having a superintendent's team that's full of people who are a carbon copy of Janice. That's absolutely not what it's about. I know what my strengths are, but I also know what my weaknesses are. So you want a real mix of different people, but you also want a mix of different roles. You absolutely don't want a superintendent's team just full of pharmacists. You want technicians, you want pharmacists, you want administrators, you want people who are really good at IT, and particularly people like me need people who are really good at doing things on IT, because I can be guaranteed, to mess it up, but I know where my weaknesses are, and we've always laughed about it in the team. I'll say, well, I'm going to get one of you to do that, because that I am rubbish at doing that, and it's not about being this perfect person. I'm going, well, yeah, you can all do that better than me. Yes, I can do something on Excel. It'll take me hours, and when you'll be able to do it in 10 minutes. It's about laughing about your strengths and your weaknesses, but also helping other people develop into those things, and say, you develop those skills, because I want to surround myself with great people. And one of my proudest things is how many people have moved on from my team. And yes, it is a good thing when people move on from your team. I want people to stay. I don't want them all to move. I like them to go in a bit of a sequence, not so you have a bit of a crisis. But I feel so proud when people, have done a good session in the superintendent's team and then move into other teams and go on to flourish, or even when they leave the organisation. Some of the people I'm proudest of are people who've worked with me and have left and gone elsewhere. And yes, it's upsetting when they leave, but then when you see what they've gone on to do in other places, I feel proud that I played a part in that. And I think the same about the people I had as pre-regis years ago. I feel a bit like a mother hen, with the brood going off to do different things. But yeah, there's people gone off to do all sorts, and I think if I played a small part in helping develop them and give them the skills, then that's a real success, and it's important to me. And I think you build your career around what's important to you, don't you? So
absolutely. I'm conscious that Nabila's asked a question, because Nabila, you asked what would you say, and let me pop this up on here. What would you say has been your biggest challenge as superintendent at Well?
I probably had two equally big challenges. The first one chronologically was our first attempt at doing hub and spoke dispensing, which a lot of you will know did not work. It was called advanced dispensing. It was really, really challenging, but really, really difficult, because whilst everybody wanted it to work, I was one of the people who was saying, I don't believe it is working. I think it's causing more issues. And, you know, when people are sometimes so desperately wanting it to be a success, and you feel like, you know, you might be the person pouring, you know, cold water on people's enthusiasm. That was really challenging to deal with because a lot of money was invested and it didn't come to fruition. But it's a learning opportunity, isn't it? If it hadn't been done like that, then that learning then went into what has now become a very successful central fulfillment through the hub at Stoke. So, you know, you do learn by your mistakes, but it was a very difficult period of time. How long do you let something go to see is it going to improve, and is it going to get better because it's a learning thing, or is it not right? So that was really difficult. And then I think the other thing, and this will be no surprise, is actually I think the challenges right at the beginning of the pandemic were really challenging because of the sudden increase in pressure, particularly on our online pharmacy, coupled with all the pressure on the pharmacy teams with that sudden change, and, you know, and being accessible and all the change that had to happen, and having to think through all the processes and procedures that needed to be changed. And a lot of that, I'm so proud of the work that the patient safety group did there, because we came together and we as a mixture of medication safety officers, superintendents, work collaboratively on a lot of processes to support the profession. But it was challenging. There was a lot of customer interaction needed. I personally dealt with a lot of complaints, some which were founded and some which weren't, because people didn't understand. But it was a lot of pressure. You know, it was literally 7 days a week after week. I had a spell where I was probably only having 3 hours sleep a night while we were writing processes and trying to make things right for the team. It wasn't about just doing things for the sake of that. It's about trying to do the thinking and help keep our colleagues safe. And that took a lot of time and effort. But again, it's about how much you want to put into. You get out of things what you put into it. You know, I put a lot of effort into that, and I'm really proud of the things we produced to keep colleagues safe during that period, and to keep patients safe through the processes. So I don't look back and regret it, but it was challenging. And I did have a period of time when I made a video at work, and then when I watched it back and I got loads of comments, I looked like I was almost dead. I looked awful, really pale, and I should have put more makeup on, but I did look really, you know, not at my best. And, you know, you can only keep up that pressure for a certain length of time, and then you have to ease back, don't you? And it was a very challenging period. So I'd say those are the things that have been most difficult, you know, as a sustained thing. There's obviously difficult incidents that, you know, that happen on and off, but, you know, that's just part of what you do, you know, supporting with things like that.
Shilpa says that she agrees it's great seeing people you work with going on to be successful in their career, knowing you've been part of that journey. And, you know, that's, you know, I guess that's, as you said, it's one of your proudest moments, right? Being the superintendent and seeing your colleagues thrive, and then going off and doing things, you know, that are right for them, right? That's part of the role.
Well, you know you're investing in your team, and it's not good for a team. You know, you want some stability, but it's not good for the team to always stay the same, because, you know, somebody leaves and yes, it's upsetting. And the same thing applies to me moving on from, well, you know, that team will be forming again as a new team. You know, Ifti as the superintendent will bring different skills and strengths to it. So they will become a different team. It's not about a better team or a worse team. It'll just be a different team. And that also means different opportunities for the other people in the team as you move responsibilities around, so people can grow. And each time you bring somebody new into your team from whatever background, they bring something different to the party. But also, I think, you know, just because you're the superintendent doesn't mean you haven't got things to learn. Nobody knows it all, and you can never know it all. So each time somebody's joined my team, and I haven't always recruited the people, you know, because they don't all report direct to me. They've brought something different, and every person has contributed something to making, over the years, to making me the superintendent that I am. It's a very collaborative thing, or it is for me, being a superintendent in a large organisation. You know, it's not just some kind of, the superintendent makes all the decisions. It's about that thinking and challenge and collectively, working together, but using the expertise, because everybody in the superintendent's team that was my team was an expert in something, and they all brought something to it. I was a generalist, meshing all that together. It's a bit like conducting the orchestra, isn't it? And you've got all the lead instruments, you know, and you're pulling all that together into a mix that means that collective, you know, energy and effort and output is the best that it can be. And last year, the superintendent's team was the team of the year. You know, and when everybody contributed a bit to the application for that, and when I saw it all together and I read it, I cried. It was so moving to see what everybody had like contributed to their bit of it, you know. And you can't ask for any, you know, for any more. And it's a big commitment for anybody being in a superintendent's team, not just the superintendent, because, you know, it can never be 9 to 5. It's always there, you know, you give a lot of yourself personally in the superintendent's team, as all pharmacists do, you know, to things being right, you know, for patients, but also for colleagues, you know, and it, you know, you have to look really hard when you're part of a superintendent's team to be looking for what's gone right and what's good, because the nature of what goes on in a superintendent's team is you get incidents, you get complaints, and you have to look past that and focus on, in pharmacy, far more goes right than goes wrong, but we talk a lot about what goes wrong, and we can learn as much from what's gone right as we can from what's gone wrong. But I'm fortunate that obviously, and different superintendents have different breadths of remit, is that, you know, services and developments and operational things also had touch points into my team, so it wasn't all thinking about, you know, kind of negative stuff. And I spent a lot of time involved with the people team around learning and development, what needs to happen for pre-regis, what happened, and foundation pharmacists, you know, what needs to happen for prov regis, what's going to happen for all support staff, so technician, you know, training, you know, pharmacy assistant, all that meshes together, because ultimately all those things come together, which then means that you've got the best teams that you can try and get, and then that keeps colleagues happy but also keeps patients safe. So it's a bit like a jigsaw, and you've got tentacles all over the place as a superintendent. You have to be a bit like a meerkat, you know, listening out what's going on, being curious. You have to be curious, and you go, what's that? Or you see emails, you go, oh, tell me a bit more about that, you know, because you can't be everywhere, but you can be curious and you can challenge, and you have to be courageous, because sometimes you go, you tell me a bit more about that. Well, have you thought about this? And sometimes you have to say no. And now very rarely does a superintendent say no. And I tried never to say no. It's like, let me find another way that you can do that, that, you know, is better professionally. But sometimes you do have to say no, you know, and you have to have that courage to be able to speak up. You might be the lone voice, but you have to have that courage and confidence to do that, which is probably why in a large organisation, the people who are superintendents will have done a lot of other things before they become that position, because, you know, it's a senior position, and you've got to have that influence and gravitas with the other senior people working in an organisation, and be able to, I suppose, hold your own in terms of those conversations, which will be difficult, challenging conversations, because that's the nature of the role. Just because you're the superintendent doesn't mean everybody goes yes to you. You have to have those challenging conversations and explain stuff to them.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to touch upon your leadership style a little bit, because Noura's asked a question about what would you say your weaknesses are and how did you overcome them? And, you know, you've got to have such self-awareness in order to be an effective superintendent. How did you develop that self-awareness over your years as a superintendent?
By asking for feedback. From, you know, and I mean, 360-degree feedback can be really helpful. And, you know, we did that with him well. And I know they always say, oh, ask a few people. But I said, well, I need to ask more people. I need to ask the people I work with externally, because how you are and how you the part you play is different within your own team. And, you know, I played a different role when I was at PS&C or at CCA, and when I'm chairing the safety group. So I ask people from all over, you know, different backgrounds to give feedback and suggestions. And you do become aware of your own weaknesses and traits. And I don't think we should dwell too much on weaknesses and necessarily feel that we have to overcome them. I mean, just like a strength, if you overplay it, you know, it's not good to overplay your strengths. I think it's about being aware of it. And if you decide that you want to invest in overcoming it, then you do the things that you need to do that. You know, you get coached, or you go on training, or whatever it is, or you tackle it in different ways. And some of that might be about what you use your team for. So going back to what I said before about things like Excel, I thought, yeah, I can go on loads of courses, but I don't use it enough on a daily basis to keep myself, you know, really good at doing it. So actually, I've got roles in the team that could do that and provide a more efficient and effective service to the other people in the team. So you have to ask yourself, what are the things that you really need to be able to do and be competent at? And just knowing it's a weakness, but you have to make sure that it's covered off somewhere, in some shape or form, however you try to do that. I haven't ever set out to say I need to be brilliant at everything. I'm not brilliant at everything. And, you know, I know that I work, I say all the right things, and a lot of people on the call will know this. You know, I know all the things that I should be doing about health and well-being, and I'm very keen on promoting that with my team and chivying them. And they all go, pot and kettle. You know, you're up doing what you do. But some of I worked late, I worked long hours, but that was by choice. I wasn't being forced to do that. I chose sometimes to work late because I wanted to create time to do other things. So you make your own decisions. So in order to do all the stuff that I did externally, and to invest time in the safety group, and to create time, you know, to go and do the things that were important, going out and seeing people and spending time talking to people and coaching and mentoring other people to create that time. Sometimes you compensate in different ways by you shift things around in your agenda. I've always believed that you've got to make time for people if there's something you can do to help them. And I probably have sometimes done that to the detriment of things for myself. But that's just me. I've always been like that. I probably wouldn't be me if I didn't do that. If I can help somebody, and if it's possible for me to do it, I will do it, even though I put myself probably under inordinate pressure. I'm not saying that's a good strategy for people, but it has worked for me. But I do know when I can't do any more. So if I absolutely can't, if it's possible to do it, I'll do it. But when I do say I can't do something, people who know me know it is not possible for me to do it, else I would have jiggled things around, which is why my team will have told you that, you know, if I've said I'll make a cake, even if I'm making that cake at midnight, I will be making that. I'll be making that cake. Because if I say I'll do something, you know, that one of my personal integrity things is, if I say I'll do something, I will do it. You know, so
yeah. I mean, you know, that's also because you are so self-aware of yourself. You know what you can and what you can't do, and you know, and that's one of your principles, right?
Yes.
Your principle is that when I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to make it happen.
Yeah.
You know, and to anyone watching this, it's a really, you know, that's such an important message. And you know, you saying that you're not, you accept the fact that you're not great at absolutely everything, and that you can't be, you know, we can't be, we're not completely infallible, are we? Do you know what I mean? And just hearing that from you as a superintendent, I think is such an important message for us all, because, you know, you can't be everything. Nabila's asked a really, really, really cool question, which is, I appreciate you must have seen the role of pharmacists in community evolve and change significantly over the years. What do you think our role will be in community in 20 years' time?
Good question. I'm not sure I can see. Well, it depends how fast things happen, because sometimes I think things are going to happen quite quickly and they don't. I've been talking about a service-led future practically the whole time that I've been the superintendent, and lo and behold, it's only just about happening. So whether it's 20 years or not, I do believe that, you know, in the future, pharmacists won't be involved in the dispensing process at all. I think, you know, clinical checks will be done remotely using technology. I think artificial intelligence will be a big part of that. I mean, I'm no tech person, and you'll be far more experienced at this than I am. However, I do think that the pharmacist role will be very much about service, but in that broader sense, I think it'll be that much more holistic approach. I think there'll be much more well-being and counselling, and instead of services being just individual services, I think it'll be about patients coming to see pharmacists and being probably you'll dip into your toolkit of things that behind the scenes are services, but people won't come. And it's almost like people come and you go, right, you've come for smoking or you've come for this, and it's kind of, you know, a one-off thing. It'll be more a kind of care plan, and somebody comes and you're through, you know, your regular relationship with them, working out what you need to do from them. I'd like to feel that the relationship with patients would be from when they're first well. I mean, I don't think pharmacy should be about illness. It should be about wellness. So, if that relationship's built up, you know, that you know, prevention agenda, having conversations, so people have that relationship with the pharmacist. I think pharmacists should be going out to all places. I don't think pharmacy is anything to do with the premises. I think pharmacists should be all over the place, taking healthcare to wherever it needs to be taken. But that package of, if you have a conversation, you can do for that patient whatever needs to be done. I think it will become much more of that kind of you know, a service. There'll still be a need for everybody to have medicines, but I think that can be done in a far more streamlined way. And if I'm being truly honest, I think the only reason that lots of people are interested in dispensing is because that's currently where the finances are. If the money is not in dispensing, then the focus will shift to how best pharmacists and pharmacy teams use their skills better. So we'll need to look at creative ways to supply medicines. That still supply should be through pharmacies. I just don't think it needs to be in a less intense way, so that we can free up that skill and capability to actually, you know, do what needs to be done, because we have got so much skill and potential. And I suppose that's one of the things that, just as I'm, you know, stopping being the superintendent, there's a glimmer that, you know, community pharmacy is being recognised for the fabulous profession that it actually is. I've always known it's a fabulous profession, and I've been banging the drum about it. And that's been one of the difficult things about being the superintendent, saying in the business, well, it's changing to this, and you feel like you're a broken record. It's going to be changing, and then it doesn't quite happen. It's going to be changing. But I genuinely do see now that, you know, albeit, you know, I'd like it to be faster than it is, but it can only go as fast as the profession can go with it, because we have to take people with us. And it's difficult at the moment because the pharmacy profession is worn out. You know, we've given our all over the last 18 months. And, you know, unfortunately, the NHS hasn't really given us any rest and recuperation time to recharge our batteries and you know, and move on. But community pharmacy, I firmly believe, is the answer to a significant number of the NHS's problems. The challenge is getting them, A, to recognise it, and B, to pay for that and give us the funding in order to do what we need to do, because we can make such a difference to patients.
100%. I 100% believe that wholeheartedly. You know, you can absolutely make a huge difference. And, you know, Nabila's just said, what an amazing vision. Thank you for sharing your insight. It's been so informative. You know, to have that vision a reality. I mean, you know, I think about that all the time, because when I speak to pharmacists and when they, you know, when I work with pharmacists, that's really what their vision is. You know, they want to be able to make an impact on individual patients and change their lives. And the more we can engage with them on a one-to-one personal level and have that opportunity to influence their health and well-being, that's the way we're going to do it, right?
Yeah. And I think we should all remember that, you know, you can bring about change by, if all of us make small changes, you get big change. So you have to focus on what you can do and influence. So there's lots of things that none of us can influence. There's lots of things that I as a superintendent couldn't influence. You can try, and I think absolutely you can't just sit on the sidelines. And one of the reasons that I've done the things I've done and put myself out to be on PSNC, CCA, and all these other things that I've done is you can't just commentate from the sidelines. You've got to be in it and trying to influence it. And it's not about saying everybody's got to agree with you, but at least if you're on the pitch, you've got an opportunity to do something about it and contribute. And you can't criticize if you haven't been making a contribution. But all of us can make small changes and differences to people in our communities, and I fully advocate that. I know that I hear pharmacists say, well, I don't want to get involved in this, but if everybody does a little bit, then you haven't got to have a few people doing everything, so get involved locally with the LPC. I remember when I was a young pharmacist, I was so proud when somebody asked me to go on the LPC. I probably didn't know exactly what it involved, and when I got there, I felt a bit like a fish out of water. But again, it was something different. I was making a difference. But we need to encourage people to get involved in whatever bit that they want to get involved with, because the more people that get involved, it helps spread that. And if everybody puts themselves out a little bit to just give a bit here and find out what's going on, then I do think you make that difference. It's just like, we make difference to patients all the time, and we can make difference with really small things. We forget that something that seems very mundane to us can actually be life-changing to a patient. And I talk about, the power of the everyday. We forget that what we know is not known by everybody, because we get so used to it, just think, oh, everybody knows that, but they don't. They absolutely don't. And the average reading age in this country is around 10. People don't know things, so those little kind words and gestures and giving bits of information makes a huge difference. And that's where the power of the pharmacy team comes into it, because you've got all those really skilled people in a pharmacy team, all who can make a fabulous impact. Half the time they don't know that they're making that fabulous impact, because it's, you hear people say, oh, it's just what we do. But it's not just what we do. We do it, but we need to give it more, more kudos and capture it and bottle it. It's that, we need to get more pride and passion back into the profession, because if we're all going around being proud and passionate about what we do, that becomes compulsive, doesn't it? And it spreads.
And it's that becomes our narrative about our profession, doesn't it? The more we share those stories. Just quickly, I want to share this because I've been helping Rena with her social media for her business. And one of the things that I've noticed, and it's one of the things that we spoke about really early on, was really sharing the stories of people in her pharmacy and, patients and customers that come into her pharmacy and their experiences. And it's really, really amazing how just doing that very simple thing can have such a huge effect on not only your staff, but also your community, right? Yeah. And, people read those stories and they feel connected to you.
Yeah.
And that's really where the magic happens. That's really where you build relationships. And we're talking about this, but I literally have just had an article that I wrote in the Pharmacist magazine about relationships in pharmacy published today. And this is exactly what I talked about. And it's about building those relationships with people and, and those people becoming your fans ultimately, Shilpa said, we know Shilpa's obviously Kent LPC. So, she's like, I feel I'm listening to my kindred spirit. There's so many questions that are coming in and I don't want to miss anyone's questions. So let's go through them. So Madhvi said, how do you deal with difficult people, especially where you needed to influence or implement service or system, but as they have Parrot can be difficult?
So I think it's about, you need to really prepare. If you're going to be influencing difficult people, you need to get what data you can, because data counts for a lot, but you've got to paint that compelling vision and show what's in it for them. You can't just expect people to go, oh, Janice says we need to do this. You need to give people the context and the why, what it's going to mean, what needs to be done, what it's going to mean in the future. And perhaps one of the things that's really important in pharmacy is about the building blocks. So I've been talking to a number of people about things like the GP CPCS. So yes, the training that's been commissioned by HEE, is badged as the, training to do that service, but actually when you look at it, it's really fundamental training that's going to underpin lots of other services that are coming through in the NHS plan. So it's about that, creating that picture that says the why and what's in it for the benefit of patients, what's in it for the benefits of the business, what's in the benefits for colleagues. So you're painting that as a bit of a narrative. But I think it's also helpful to talk about what the implications are of not doing something. So not everything has, particularly if you're having a difficult financial conversation, has a financial positive. However, not doing something about it could have a financial negative. So you might need to do something in order to maintain the status quo or to prevent something happening that could be costly. So I think it's about thinking a lot about the people you're trying to influence, what makes them tick. So what's the bit of them that, you're going to latch into? So you could have the same conversation with 6 different people, but your angle might be slightly different. So if you know that it's the people angle that floats their boat, you might start with that. If it's the numbers, then start with, whatever, which links back to my point before about saying that if you're the superintendent having those conversations, that's why you've got to have this kind of generalist thing. It doesn't always work. Although I'd love to say that it should work, is just going and talking about it from the professional point of view does not always get you where you want to get, because other people don't always get the professional angle in the same way. And clearly, whilst I love regulations, standards, safety, all that kind of thing, I know that not everybody else in a business, quite rightly, is necessarily thinking, oh yeah, bring it on, so you have to tailor your message, to the person you're trying to influence. And if you've got a whole group of people, you need to make sure you cover off all of that in your presentation, which usually the best way to do that is to say that if you're going to present it, is to say, I'll take questions at the end, so that you don't get whichever the first person is derailing it for everybody else. So you can try and control, the conversation, but you have to prepare well for difficult conversations. It gets easier the more you get used to having, but preparation is key. So that would be my advice. And if you've got any data at all, take the numbers.
Yeah, that's such great advice. So we've got Usman as well, who's asked questions. So pharmacists will be qualifying with an independent prescribing qualification as standard in the next 5 years. How will that affect community pharmacy? Do you think most regular reviews of long-term conditions will be dealt with in community pharmacy and almost like mini GP practices? Great question, Usman.
Yeah. I don't see any reason why not. I think there's a lot of things to think about with independent prescribing. Obviously, by 2026, all the pharmacists who are, coming through university, will be independent prescribers. And then I hate this term legacy pharmacists, because we just need a better word for that. But the rest of us who haven't done IP will have gone through some training and become independent prescribers. The message that I'm sharing, though, particularly with the NHS and RPS and anybody who will listen, is to say it's fine putting everybody through the training, and there's lots of people who are prescribers at the moment, but the difference between being a prescriber and prescribing. Yes. And just because you've got a qualification, if you're not using it, then the danger is that you don't maintain your competence and your skill base, and that in itself becomes a risk. So we need to come up with a way of making sure that as people qualify, there's a way to use that, and the NHS needs to come up with something. Perhaps they need to learn from Scotland and Wales about how they look at stuff, because it's other than prescribing privately, very few pharmacists are getting the opportunity to necessarily prescribe, linked to surgeries. These things increasing, but it's not keeping pace with the number of people who are qualifying. But I see absolutely no reason why regular reviews of, I would it may not be all long-term conditions. I think there's probably conversations to be had about which are the best conditions for community pharmacists to do. I don't think community pharmacy needs to take on every single thing that's going, just because pharmacy potentially could do some stuff, and lots of different things. We need to give some thought as to what are the best things for community pharmacy to do, and make sure that we use all healthcare professionals to the best use of their skills. And we can't just keep putting loads and loads of things into community pharmacy, which was my comment previously about it may be that pharmacists have to go elsewhere to do it. Most community pharmacies are reasonably small, and community pharmacy is not always the best setting to have conversations with patients about what's important to them. And we've obviously got an aging population, so not everybody can necessarily come in. So there's still the thorny issue of supervision, which we're not going to talk about tonight. But more importantly, I'd like the NHS to be a bit more flexible in England with the NHS contract. So if we even had the ability in the NHS contract to use the 2 hours of the RP regs to actually go and do stuff, that would help. Help a lot in getting, integration and having effective conversations with other healthcare professionals. Let's start small and build on it, not try to change the world overnight.
Yeah, absolutely. You know what? There are so many things that we've talked about today, and I really, really appreciate you. So many golden nuggets that you've shared with us, Janice. I hope that we've answered everyone's questions who's asked questions. If you've got any last minute questions, then do drop them in. But I think we've more or less covered everything that's come through the comments so far. Really, really appreciate you sharing everything. And I really wanted you to talk about before you go, what are next steps for Janice? What are you doing now?
So as you mentioned before, I've just been appointed as chair of the Community Pharmacy Expert Advisory Group. So that's we're having our first proper meeting next week. We've had our kind of getting to know the group, because obviously people have been, I've been appointed and the group's been pulled together, but we didn't know each other, so we've had that meeting to get to know each other in the background. So I'm really excited about that, and hoping that group can help shape the direction of travel, for the RPS boards and the assembly. Other than that, today somebody sent me the advert for the chair of the GPHC, saying that's a job that's going. I don't know. I've thought about maybe I'll look at a non-exec thing. I'm doing a couple of things with the RPS to see if we can get more uptake of GP CPCS. So I'm doing some things there. I'm looking at options. I don't want anybody to think I'm retiring. I'm certainly not retiring. I've finished doing what I've done at Well. I've made a contribution. It's time to pass the reins on. So I'm open to offers. If there's things that people think I can do to help make a difference in the profession, because that's what it's it's about for me. There's plenty to be done. So yes, I'm looking around. Do I want to be working as much as I was working when I was employed full time? No, it would be nice to be able to have a bit of a break and a bit, there is a happy medium. And despite the fact that I still think that I'm in my mid-30s, I'm not. so I need to be realistic. My team bought me things, they asked me, what I wanted. So I've got, RHS membership and English Heritage and National Trust. So it'd be nice to do some things like that. But I do think I've still got more to contribute to the profession. So it's about, finding what I can do and where I can do it, and how best I can support. So I've got nothing fixed in mind. I'll look and see. But I'm really looking forward to doing the expert advisory group.
Yeah.
It's the group of people who've been pulled together, really diverse. And covering all sectors of community pharmacy, but also all ages. And experiences, and it's just another opportunity to try and shape what's happening. So We'll see. Yeah. It's a blank canvas at the moment. But I'm hoping I'm going to continue to be a happy healthcare professional.
Yay! Well, I've always seen you as one, and despite the fact that often, people like myself will look at you and think, gosh, the job as superintendent must be just so intense and so hard, and I can't ever see myself doing that role. But you've just shown that, really you can achieve that role, and you make it what you want to make of it, right? You set your own path within it, and that's the most amazing thing that we've seen you achieve in your career, and you've been able to create it into your own and develop yourself within that role, and I think that's really quite exciting. That's the exciting part about being a superintendent. Madhvi's just asked another quick question before we go. Janice, any tips on someone newly taking over superintendent role?
I suppose it depends on what scale it is, because I think the tips will be different. But I think one thing that's core to being a superintendent, you have to be very clear what is the standard that you want things to be to. So you have to kind of define that framework that you want things to be in. You need to know where your red lines are. All superintendents' red lines are different. You do have to be pragmatic as a superintendent, but be clear and take your time to think. Just because you're the superintendent, you don't have to make immediate decisions. There's always more time to think, so you need to stop, consider, maybe go back to it. A bit like if you had to self-check a prescription. Seek advice. It can be quite an isolated role in some respects, a superintendent, because ultimately you've got that responsibility, but there's always people who can help. I speak to people who are superintendents. The superintendents of the large organizations speak all the time. I've mentored other superintendents. I'm more than happy if somebody's becoming a new superintendent of any shape or form, if they want to get in touch with me, I'm more than happy to have a chat. Some of it comes from gut feel. It's almost an art, not a science. If something feels wrong, it probably is wrong. Go with your gut feel. It's about being principled and having integrity, and asking questions and getting the facts. People tell you things when you're the superintendent, but just because you're told something, that's our version of what they think is their truth. You need to, follow up, check, question. And often things are not as dramatic. People have told me all sorts of things. I'm thinking, oh, good grief, sounds like the world's ending. But actually, when you actually get under the nub of what's actually gone on, it's nowhere near as bad. And very rarely is anything in pharmacy as bad as it seems. It seems really bad at the moment. So it's about being calm and rational, and I know people don't think enough about the GPHC standards, but I do think every so often reading back through the standards just remind you of what's important. It's easy to forget, and they are more useful documents than people perhaps give them credit for. So it helps keep me grounded in what's important. And if you're the superintendent, the most important thing of everything is it the right thing for patients? Because that's what a superintendent is about, making sure that we're keeping patients safe. So you get that feel. Step into the patient's shoes. I always say, think about the patient, behind the prescription, the service, behind the sale or the piece of advice. Would you want that to be how your mother, father, daughter, sister, whatever family relative, would that be what you would want? And if it is, then it's probably okay, assuming it's legal and everything. But if it's not, then you need to do something about it.
Yeah, great advice, Janice. Set your red lines. Think about it from the perspective of the patient, and listen to your gut instinct. Advice for life, I would say.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Janice. I've taken up so much of your evening now.
It's fine. It's fine. I just hope it's what people wanted to hear and it's been useful to somebody.
We've had so many comments. Thank you for your thoughts. Very good points you've raised, says Usman. Thank you, Janice, says Facebook user. I don't know who you are, so please say hi. Let me know your name. Shilpa's commented earlier. Nabila's commented. I mean, thank you so much to every single person that's been watching today and, that has contributed. And thank you, Janice, for sharing your insights and your experience. And I really hope that anyone watching this who has aspirations to become a superintendent does.
Yeah. If anybody wants me, I am on LinkedIn. I don't do Facebook. Sorry, Facebook user. And I don't do Twitter but I do LinkedIn, and I will always respond. So if anybody wants anything, or wants to have a chat, then you can get hold of me.
Get in touch with Janice. Thank you so much, Janice.
You're welcome. I've enjoyed it.
I really enjoyed it. And I will see you soon. Bye.
Yes. Bye.
Oh, thank you so much to every single one of you guys who's watched live this evening. Really, really appreciate all of the comments and all of the interaction. If you are watching this again later on, then do drop a little replay, #replay. Let me know that you've watched it. Let me know what your biggest takeaways have been from the conversation that we've just had with Janice. There are so many nuggets of gold that she has dropped today. So do go back and watch it again. And I will see you next week on the Happy Healthcare Professionals live show, when I'm going to be interviewing one of my amazing clients that I've been working with. She is an absolutely amazing pharmacist who is working as the head of pharmacy at Dr. Care Anywhere. And I cannot wait for that conversation. So do join me then. In the meantime, have a great week and take care all. Bye.